Hey guys, tonight we're going somewhere a little muddier, a little louder, and somehow even more miserable than medieval Europe. We're crawling into the trenches of World War One, a place where mud replaces mattresses, rats outnumber soldiers, and the weather hates you personally. It's not a war story about glory or honour. It's about why you wouldn't last a single day. Before we slide headfirst into this damp historical disaster, take a second to like the video and subscribe, but only if you're the kind of person who enjoys falling asleep to the sound of distant shell fire and slow emotional unravelling. And leave a comment with where you're tuning in from and what ungodly hour you're listening at. Because nothing says international connection like collective insomnia. Now, dim the lights. Maybe throw on a white noise machine. Ideally one that sounds like steady rain, artillery fire, and existential dread. Pull up your blanket, pretend it's not soaked, and let's sink into the trenches together. Congratulations, you've just arrived on the Western Front. The year is 1916. You're 19, scared, underfed, and dressed in something that technically qualifies as a uniform. The good news is you're not alone. The bad news is, well, you're here. And here is hell carved out of earth and soaked in it. Your name doesn't matter. You're private somebody. One more forgettable cog in the meat grinder of modern war. You step off the supply lorry, boots sinking into the mud like it wants to keep you. And it does. You're standing in a labyrinth of trenches, each more miserable than the last, like someone designed a maze out of misery and forgot to include an exit. The smell hits first. Imagine a mixture of sweat, rot, unwashed bodies, burned powder, and something sour that your brain refuses to identify. That's trench perfume. And you'll be wearing it until the war ends, or you do, whichever comes first. A corporal barks at you to keep moving, and you obey, because confusion is your new normal. There's no welcome committee, no orientation packet, and definitely no PowerPoint explaining how to stay alive. Just mud, shouting, and the vague impression that everyone knows something you don't. You're handed a tin helmet that feels like it was made from recycled saucepans and dreams, and a rifle that's already jammed before you even touch it. It's not a weapon, it's a suggestion. You're assigned to a section of the line with men who look like they've been here since the war started. Their faces are hollow, their jokes are bitter, and their eyes don't meet yours. Not because they're unfriendly, because they've seen too many versions of you die screaming in the mud. They don't want to learn your name. They just want to see if you'll last the week. Your training didn't prepare you for this. Back at camp, you learned how to march in straight lines and salute the right direction. Here, straight lines get you shot, and saluting might get you mistaken for an officer, which is a great way to catch a sniper's attention. You keep your head down, your voice low, and your expectations lower. Welcome to the front, Private. You've got maybe 12 hours before something tries to kill you. The first real moment of clarity comes when you're shown to your living quarters, which is a generous way to describe a hole in the wall with a sandbag roof and a straw mat that's wetter than your socks. Someone's carved initials into the plank above your head. Some other private, some other nobody. They're probably buried a few feet from here, under the same mud you're trying not to drown in. It's comforting, in a nihilistic kind of way. The sense that you're just the next page in a very short book. You try to settle in, which means trying not to shiver yourself into unconsciousness while pretending the smell isn't worse than the latrine pit you passed earlier. The man next to you offers half a cigarette and a shrug. You thank him like he's handed you a winning lottery ticket. Because here, that's basically what it is. Your uniform is wool, which sounds nice until you remember it rains 147 days a week in the trenches, and wet wool is less of a fabric and more of a punishment. It soaks through, holds the cold like a grudge, and smells like wet dog wrapped in regret. Your boots are 2 sizes wrong and already leaking. You're starting to realise that trench foot isn't just a myth, it's your next milestone. Night falls, though you wouldn't know it from the overcast sky. Time slips in the trenches. There are no clocks, just long stretches of dread interrupted by sudden, deafening chaos. You ask what time lights out is, and someone laughs. Light out? The lights have been out since 1914. You don't sleep here. You wait until exhaustion overpowers terror, and you collapse into a half-dream where rats chew your ears and artillery finishes the sentence. Your first shift on sentry duty is at 3 a.m. The corporal hands you a bayonet and points toward the fire step. You climb up, careful not to silhouette your head above the parapet. A sniper's bullet doesn't care that it's your first night. You stare into the darkness. Every raindrop a possible footstep. Every gust of wind a phantom. The silence is somehow louder than gunfire. Then it happens. A distant boom, followed by a low, angry rumble. Artillery miles away, but coming closer. The veteran next to you doesn't flinch. He just adjusts his helmet and mutters something that sounds like, "Here we go." You brace. Not because you know what's coming, but because your body understands something your mind doesn't yet. This is normal now. You're not in a war zone. You're home. And home is a ditch filled with mud, smoke, rats and corpses you don't talk about. The bombardment doesn't stop. It just changes tempo, like a terrible orchestra where every instrument is a bomb and the conductor hates you. A shell lands close enough to make your teeth clack together. The dirt jumps. Your heartbeat forgets its rhythm. Something splashes on your sleeve, and you pray it's mud. You don't check. Better not to know. Eventually the artillery fades. Not because they've run out, just because they're busy somewhere else. You're told to get some rest, which is trench code for try not to cry until you're alone. You slump down against the wall, but the wall is wet, and so is the ground, and so are your socks, and so is your soul. Everything here is damp and cold and sticky, and somehow it smells like fire and mildew at the same time. The corporal throws you a biscuit that looks like it survived the Crimean War. You try to bite it. It fights back. It wins. The only way to eat it is to soak it in tea, which, when available, tastes like warm tin and sadness. But you eat it. You eat everything you're given because hunger doesn't have pride. Eventually you notice the sound that's been gnawing at the edges of your hearing all day. It's not gunfire. It's not shouting. It's squeaking. You turn and see them. Rats. Fat ones. Dozens. No, hundreds. They scurry between boots, over sandbags, across laps. Some of them don't even run anymore. They walk. Waddle, really. Confident. Like they're part of the command staff. They chew on corpses, nibble at rations, give side eye to the living like they're waiting their turn. You swat at one and it hisses at you, annoyed that you disturbed its dinner. There's a guy named Milligan who swears the rats talk to each other. You laugh until he shows you one with half a human finger in its mouth. Then you stop laughing. Someone in your unit has started giving the rats names. There's General Whiskers, Sergeant Squeak, Major Nibbles. It's funny until you realise naming them makes it easier to accept they're permanent. They're not going anywhere. You might leave the trench one day. The rats? They'll inherit it. The sun, or what little of it pierces the grey sludge overhead, begins to set. You're told this is stand to again, just in case the Germans feel frisky at dusk. You line up, bayonet affixed, peering over the parapet into a landscape that looks like God lost interest halfway through sculpting it. There's barbed wire, craters, smoke, and bodies. Always bodies. Some hang on the wire like grotesque decorations, others half buried by shell blasts, faces frozen in a scream they never got to finish. No Man's Land is less of a place and more of a graveyard with aspirations. You try not to look. You fail. The man beside you is muttering a prayer. You don't know what language it's in, but you recognise the tone. Please, not today. You echo it silently, and wonder if the mud below your feet is made more of soil or soldiers. After an hour of silence, someone whispers, "Stand down." You don't move at first. You're still holding your breath, waiting for the bullet that didn't come. Slowly, your body unwinds. You sit. You sink. You stare at the ground like it owes you something. Later, under cover of darkness, you're given your first task. Wire duty. That's when you learn just how suicidal maintenance can be. You and 2 others are told to crawl into no man's land with rolls of barbed wire and iron stakes. To fix the front barrier. In pitch black. With only your heartbeat for company. You climb out quietly, fingers trembling. Every step is careful. Every breath shallow. You belly crawl through mud, over limbs, past things you pretend not to feel under your hands. You work in silence, your partner whispering, keep low, like a prayer. The stakes go in slowly, the wire coils unwind like nervous snakes. Halfway through, a flare goes up, the sky turns white, and for a second you see everything, the wire, the craters, the dead, your own hand shaking. You duck, flattening yourself into the earth, heart thumping so loudly you think it might give you away. But no shots come. Not this time. You finish the job and crawl back like something reborn in horror. You return to the trench shaking. Someone claps your back. First one's the worst, they say, which is not comforting. You collapse into your dugout again, too tired to think, too wired to sleep. Your hands won't stop trembling. Your body aches from adrenaline withdrawal. You lie on your side, and for a moment you forget your own name. You don't remember what day it is. You don't even remember what life was before this. All you know is cold, and damp, and fear. A voice in the dark says, "You did good." You nod, because you want it to be true. Because even if it's not, pretending matters. You don't sleep. You shut your eyes and drift somewhere just south of consciousness, ears tuned to the sound of rats, your own breathing, and the occasional distant scream that no one ever talks about the next day. And this day that has somehow lasted a century, is not even over yet. Morning comes like a betrayal. There's no sunrise, just the dark shifting into a slightly less aggressive version of itself. Everything is grey, like someone forgot how colour works. Your eyes hurt. Not from sleep, but from not having it. You blink at nothing, trying to remember where you are, and then it hits. You're still here. You sit up and immediately regret it. Your spine sounds like a stack of frozen twigs. Your knees protest with the passion of 1,000 mutinies, and your head pounds with the dull rhythm of unresolved fear. Your mouth tastes like mildew and metal. Someone hands you a tin cup of tea. You thank them. It's lukewarm, and vaguely onion-flavoured, which is confusing because there are no onions. Someone shouts, "Stand to!" and you scramble again. Boots half-laced, heart fully racing. You line up like meat on a shelf, peering over into the thick fog of no man's land. Nothing moves, which somehow makes it worse. The silence isn't calm, it's loaded, like everything's waiting for the cue to unravel again. No attack comes, not today. That's the thing about the front. It doesn't always kill you directly. Sometimes it just shaves thin slices of your soul until you stop noticing what's missing. After stand to, you're sent to check duckboards, wooden planks laid over the mud so soldiers don't sink and vanish like lost coins. Half of them are rotted. The rest are slippery, unpredictable, and possibly sentient. You step on one and nearly disappear waist deep into the trench floor. A hand yanks you out. You thank them without looking. It doesn't matter who it was. Everyone here is the same blend of dirty uniform and dead eyes. A runner passes by, breathless, holding a folded note from someone who probably died right after writing it. You glance up and catch a glimpse of the sky, just for a second, grey again. You can't remember the last time you saw blue, or stars, or anything that didn't feel like the world closing in. Someone yells, "Gas!" and suddenly everything's a blur. You fumble for your mask, hands shaking. It smells like rubber and desperation. You strap it on and breathe through a filter that doesn't filter anything. False alarm. Just mist. Everyone sighs, but no one takes the mask off right away. You've learned not to trust peace. Later, you write a letter home. You stare at the blank page and try to think of something to say that won't be blacked out by the censors. You settle on, "Doing fine. The lads are in good spirits. Weather's holding." None of it is true, but the truth doesn't fit on paper, and even if it did, your mother doesn't need to read about lice in your ears and rats eating boots off corpses. You finish the letter. You don't sign it with love, just your name, just in case. That night, a chaplain visits. He hands out tiny Bibles and murmurs blessings like he's trying not to wake the dead. You take the Bible, not because you're religious, because it's small and warm and human. You tuck it in your breast pocket and wonder if it's thick enough to stop a bullet. The corporal does a head count. 1 short. No one reacts. No questions. No search party. Just a line drawn through a name. Gone. And somehow, life continues. You watch a man shave with cold water and a cracked mirror, humming a tune like he's not surrounded by decay. You help repair sandbags, stuffing them with whatever dirt isn't already cursed. You change your socks, if you have a spare. If you don't, you dry them over a candle and pretend the holes are ventilation. Your boots squelch when you walk. Your ankles burn from constant wet. You scratch until your skin bleeds and blame it on the lice. It is the lice, mostly. Maybe also nerves. And yet, here's the strange part. It all begins to feel ordinary. The whistle of a distant shell doesn't make you jump. The groan of a dying man 3 trenches down barely registers. The stink of unwashed bodies fades into your own. Misery stops being an emergency. It becomes the baseline. You learn to identify artillery by sound. That one's ours. That one's German. That one's too close. You joke about your trench collapsing. You name the worst rats. You argue over whether trench foot is worse than dysentery. You place bets on who'll snap next. And somehow, you're still standing. Still breathing. Still waiting for the thing that will finally end this day, that never seems to end. Because deep down, beneath the uniform and the grime, and the 1,000-yard stare. You know something no one says out loud? The real horror isn't dying in the trench. It's getting used to it. Let's talk about the place, the trench, your new home, your whole world. Calling it a trench is generous. It implies structure, engineering, intention. What you're actually living in is more like an accidental canyon filled with rot. A hand-dug grave with just enough extra room for existential crisis. The walls are supposed to be reinforced with sandbags and wooden planks, but most of the time they're collapsing in on themselves like they, too, are tired of being here. The floor is mud. Not just wet dirt, but a sentient sludge with ambitions. It sucks at your boots when you walk, laughs when you try to run, and occasionally swallows your leg up to the knee. You've stopped pulling up your socks. There's no point. The mud finds its way in. It always does. And the rain, it's constant. A drizzle if you're lucky. A torrential punishment if you're not. It falls in slow, deliberate sheets that soak through your clothes, into your skin, and finally settle somewhere in your bones. Even your thoughts feel damp. It seeps into everything. Letters from home, the inside of your boots, the bread in your rations, your morale. There's a bucket marked, dry socks, do not touch. No one knows who put it there. It's a joke. Maybe the only one still running. When it rains hard, the trench floods. Not a little puddle. A full body immersion. You wade through it like you're crossing a swamp in borrowed shoes. Rats float by on pieces of wood. One time a corpse does too. No one says anything. Someone just pokes it with a stick to check if it's one of ours. It is. They drag it out, lay it against the wall, and cover the face. Not out of respect, just to avoid the smell. And the smell. Where do you even begin? It's layered, complex, an olfactory symphony of everything wrong. There's the wet wool funk of unwashed uniforms, the ripe, sour rot of mould in the sandbags, the iron stink of blood that never quite fades, then the sweet, sickly undercurrent of decay. Human decay. That's the one that gets you. It's not sharp. It's not sudden. It creeps in, like a memory you don't want. You breathe through your mouth. It doesn't help. No one talks about the smell. Not because they don't notice. Because if you mention it, you acknowledge it's real. And that makes it worse. Flies love it here. They're everywhere. Swarming wounds, crawling over eyes, dive-bombing food. You swat them away until you get tired. Then you just let them land. It's easier. Some of them become regulars. You start to recognise the big one with the lazy wing. You name him. Harold. He outlives two of your section mates. The trench isn't straight. It zigzags, because straight lines are easy to shell. Every few metres there's a step, a corner, a dip, each one waiting to twist your ankle or break your spirit. You memorise the layout by injury. That corner near the latrine? That's where you smacked your shin. The bend before the fire step? That's where you slipped and landed face first in what might have been a chicken once. Above you, sandbags, or what's left of them. Rats chew through them at night. Rain melts them by day. They sag like tired shoulders, barely holding back the collapse. Every now and then, one gives out entirely and spills its guts into the trench like it couldn't take it anymore. You nod, sympathetically. You get it. There's barbed wire strung along the front, but it's mostly decorative now. Covered in muck, snapped in places, tangled like a bad haircut. It used to mean protection. Now it's just another thing to trip over while running from death. And it's loud, not always from combat. Sometimes from nature. the wind moaning through broken branches, the creak of waterlogged boards, the cough of a soldier trying not to be heard. But then there's the real noise, the war. Artillery in the distance, machine gun chatter, the sudden, stomach-churning crack of a rifle close by. Sounds you never forget. Sounds that get inside you. You don't flinch anymore. You twitch. Like your body is preemptively trying to dodge ghosts. But it's the quiet that breaks you. Because when it's quiet, you hear the little things. The drip of water onto soaked wood. The rustle of something moving just outside the trench. The ragged breathing of the man beside you, asleep but not at peace. The silence isn't empty. It's full of things you're not ready to think about, so you keep busy. You clean your rifle for the 8th time. You write a letter you'll never send. You count the planks in the wall. You hum, quietly, off-key. Time doesn't pass here. It limps. There's no clock, no schedule. Just light and dark. Sometimes they reverse. You wake up convinced it's morning, only to be told it's nearly midnight. You stop correcting yourself. You stop asking. Day becomes a concept. Night becomes a threat. And sleep? Sleep is a gamble. When you lie down, it's not to rest. It's to surrender. To whatever dreams trench life decides to feed you. Sometimes you dream of home, only to wake up crying into mud. Sometimes you dream of silence and wake to a scream. You never talk about the dreams. They're yours. One of the few things the war hasn't confiscated yet. But the trench, this place, this organism, it's taken the rest. It's in your hair, in your lungs, in your memories. It crawls up your legs at night and whispers that this is all there ever was and all there ever will be. You start to believe it. Because the trench doesn't just hold your body, it keeps your mind. By now the trench is less of a place and more of a presence. You don't just walk through it, you're absorbed by it. The walls close in, not metaphorically, literally. The trench is always collapsing, always needing repair, always one rainstorm away from being a ditch full of water, blood, and regret. At first, you try to fight it. You dig drainage channels, pile up sandbags, try to build shelves into the wall for your few belongings. A knife, a photo, a matchbook that doesn't work anymore. But the trench laughs. It consumes. Your shelves rot. Your knife rusts. The photo sticks to the wall one morning and tears in half when you peel it off. You stare at the piece you saved and pretend it's the whole thing. The weather doesn't care about you. It does its worst in stages. Rain turns your trench into a stream, then into a swamp, then into a coffin-shaped lake. Cold turns your fingers into pale wood, then red sausages, then numb tools barely capable of holding a spoon, then nothing. Wind howls, not romantically, like something angry, something hunting. You wrap your coat tighter. It doesn't help. The cold always finds a way in. Through seams, through soles, through your skull. One night it hails. Actual ice. It pounds the trench like a warning. You sit under your canvas cover, one corner of a tarp barely hanging on, and pretend the sky isn't actively trying to kill you. You joke to yourself quietly that hell isn't fire, it's just never being dry again. And then there's the mud. Always the mud. The kind of mud that feels alive. That shifts underfoot when you're trying to sleep. That swallows things and doesn't give them back. One man dropped his bayonet into the trench floor and spent an hour digging. Never found it. Later, another man found a boot. No foot, just the boot. No one asked whose it was. You just added it to the pile of things you no longer question. There's a specific sound boots make when you try to walk through ankle-deep filth. A long, slow slurp, like the earth is licking you. That sound haunts you. At first you hate it. Then you notice when it's gone, that's worse. Silence means something else is coming. And always above you, the sky. An endless smear of grey. Sometimes darker grey. Occasionally white, but never blue. Never warm. The only stars you see are flashes from explosions. You've forgotten what the moon looks like. When the mist rolls in, visibility drops to nothing. You can't see 2 feet ahead. You walk with your hands out like a sleepwalker, groping at air, praying you don't step into a hole, or over the edge of your trench, and into eternity. Sometimes voices call through the fog. Sometimes they're familiar. Sometimes they aren't. You answer anyway. Better to risk talking to a ghost than be alone with your thoughts. And it's not just nature, it's what nature's hosting. The trench is alive with pests. The lice, of course, tiny, relentless. You scratch until you bleed. Then you scratch some more. They live in your seams, your armpits, your eyebrows. They laugh at soap. They shrug at fire. You develop a ritual. Every morning, dig into your shirt collar with a fingernail and flick away what you find. If you're lucky, it's just one. Then the fleas. Less common, but more infuriating. One man went mad from the bites, stripped off his clothes and ran up the fire steps screaming. They found him face down in no man's land. No one said anything. You just took his place in the rotation. And the rats. Again. Always the rats. You wake up one night with one on your chest. It's chewing your bread. You don't move. If it thinks you're a threat, it'll bite. You let it finish, then toss the rest away and watch it scamper off, like it owns the place. It does. Some nights they fight. The rats. You hear them in the walls, gnashing, squealing, tearing at each other. Over what? You don't want to know. Some of them die in the trench. You find them bloated, curled around your gear. You toss them into the latrine. They'll be back. They always come back. Then there's the trench art. People decorate. They carve names into beams, scratch poems onto ammo boxes, draw crude pictures of women on the walls. Not because they're artists, because it's the only way to push back. Against the filth, the madness, the sense that this place is swallowing them whole. You find yourself doing it too, etching something into the dirt with a stick. Not for beauty, for proof. That you were here. That you mattered. Even if only for a line or two. And sometimes the trench tries to remind you it used to be part of a world. A flower pokes through the wall one spring morning. Tiny, yellow. You stare at it for a long time. Then someone steps on it by accident. They don't even notice. Later, you find an old biscuit tin, flattened by a boot print. Inside it, a tooth. No one asks. The trench doesn't give you answers, just more questions, more weather, more water, more walls that close in. It becomes your entire sense of direction. You stop dreaming of leaving. You start dreaming of dry spots, of a warm place under the parapet, of a corner where the wind doesn't reach. You don't live here. You endure. And endurance is measured in inches. In dry matches. In one last smoke before watch. In knowing which plank creaks, which one breaks. In memorising the angles where bullets ricochet. Eventually, the trench is all you know. And worse than that, it's all you trust. You wake up choking on mud. Not because you rolled into it, but because it found you. The rain from last night turned your dugout into a puddle. The kind that rises slowly while you sleep. You sputter, spit, sit up, and everything hurts. Your clothes stick to your skin like a second, soggier version of yourself. Your boots are waterlogged, your blanket is a myth, and the fire went out 2 nights ago. You're cold, but it's not the kind of cold you can fix. Not with movement, not with wool. It's deep, internal. The kind of chill that changes you, that whispers, "This is what you are now." You crawl out into the trench like something recently exhumed. The walls are slick, the floor sloshes. Someone has slipped ahead of you and left a smear of blood across the duckboards. No one mentions it. He's fine, or he's not. Either way, it's morning, which means more of the same. You're handed a sandbag and a shovel. Not for building, for fixing. The trench collapsed again overnight. Half of B Company is now ankle deep in their own barracks. You pile dirt, stack bags, plug holes with your bare hands. You wipe your face and realise it's not sweat. It's just condensation from your own breath, recycled by the damp air. The mud sucks at your boots. You step. It resists. You step again. It lets go with a slurp that sounds vaguely obscene. You stop noticing. The trench has rhythms, sounds, movement. You adapt, like an animal learning to live underground. You stop walking upright. Too risky. You crouch, stoop, scuttle like some half-developed thing. You talk less. Your sentences shrink. Mud's worse. Fire steps flooded. See my mess tin? No one answers. No one really hears. A rat dies in your dugout. You find it under your pack, curled like a comma. You don't move it. You name it. It becomes a roommate. When someone tries to kick it aside, you stop them. You say, "Leave him." You don't know why. Food arrives, if you can call it that. It's stew, technically. A slurry of roots and salt, and something stringy that might have once had a face. You eat it without looking. If it's warm, it's good. If it's not, it's still food. A man throws up after eating. No one checks on him. He wipes his mouth, laughs, says, "Too rich for me," and goes back for seconds. You boil your socks over a small fire. Not to clean them, just to dry them. They come out harder than they went in. You put them on anyway. Your skin peels off with them later. It's fine. You're used to bleeding. The corporal jokes that your feet will fall off before your mind does. No one laughs. Too late. That happened weeks ago. Time keeps moving, but you don't. You measure days by shifts, by rations, by which letter you reread. Someone gets a parcel from home. Biscuits and a knitted scarf. The biscuits are mouldy. The scarf gets traded for tobacco. You wonder what that says about you. When someone dies now, it's logistical. Their gear gets passed down. Their space is filled. Their name is erased with a wet thumb from the board. You used to feel it. Now you just take the shovel. The trench floods again. You stop trying to stop it. You just lift your knees higher when you walk. A man slips and breaks his arm. He splints it himself. You help him tie the bandage with teeth, because your hands are too stiff. No one says, "Good job." You just nod and walk away. Above you the sky flickers orange. Another barrage. No one ducks. It's not close enough. Yet. And then it is. A shell lands on the support trench. It shakes everything. Earth sprays. Boards snap. For a moment you think the sky is falling in. And maybe it is. You climb out. Walk toward the noise. Not because you were ordered, because you need something to do. There's a crater where part of the trench used to be. Smoke rises. Screams, maybe. It's hard to tell over the ringing in your ears. You find a man sitting next to a leg. Just the leg. He's smoking. Staring at it like it owes him money. You sit beside him. He offers the cigarette. You take it. Neither of you says anything. Later, back in your dugout, you try to remember what day it is. Not the number, just the kind. Thursday, Sunday, it doesn't matter. The war doesn't believe in calendars. Your fingertips are cracked. Your lips split. You can't tell if your jacket is stiff from water, blood, or both. You catch a reflection in a bit of tin. You don't recognise it. The eyes are older. The mouth is wrong. You smile. It looks like a wound. That night, you dream about grass. Just grass. A field. No gunfire, no shouting, no mud. You wake up crying. No one sees. You go back to work. You were told war was about fighting, strategy, glory. You imagined charging over a hill, shouting, rifle raised, the wind at your back and courage in your chest. That's not what happens. Not here. War is labour. Endless, grinding, thankless labour. The real battle isn't fought with bullets. It's fought with shovels, sandbags, and whatever part of your soul hasn't already eroded into the trench floor. You work because you're told to, because there's always more to do, because if you stop, the trench falls apart, or you do, or both. Your day starts with work detail, always, sometimes before the sun rises, sometimes instead of sleep. You haul supplies, you repair walls, you refill sandbags that melted overnight under rain and blood, you clear debris from shell blasts, you dig. You dig constantly. Digging isn't just a task. It's a ritual, a punishment, a prayer. You dig to drain water. You dig to reinforce walls. You dig to bury things. Sometimes friends, sometimes enemies. Sometimes parts of people that used to be whole. The spade becomes an extension of you. You hold it more than your rifle. Your hands mould to it. Blister. Bleed. Callous, repeat. You lose track of what's dirt and what's flesh. You don't ask. You just keep digging. Then there's wiring parties. These sound harmless. They're not. You leave the relative safety of your trench in the middle of the night with rolls of barbed wire and metal stakes. You crawl into no man's land, the open wound between you and the enemy, and set up obstacles. If you're lucky, it's quiet. If you're not, you're dead before your fingers unroll the first loop. Either way, it's not about courage. It's about timing and staying low and praying no one on the other side is bored or twitchy. You come back cold, soaked, terrified and proud. Not because you did something heroic, because you came back. And the reward? More digging, more carrying, more fetching water from a poisoned stream, more hauling corpses to a shallow grave with a stick and a prayer. You work like you're being punished, but you can't remember the crime. Sometimes you're on latrine duty. A job so foul it doesn't even deserve a proper name. You take a bucket, a spade, and a strong stomach. You scrape, scoop, and shovel the worst of humanity into a hole someone else dug last week. Then you cover it, mark it with a stick, and hope the rain doesn't uncover it again. Other days you're on watch, which means standing still for hours, staring into fog, pretending you're not freezing, while your mind plays games with every rustle and whisper. You stay focused, because the 1 second you're not is the 1 second someone else dies. Or you do. Then there's the chores. Cleaning your rifle. Cleaning your boots. Cleaning your body if you're lucky enough to have water. You do it not because it matters, but because it's the one part of life that still follows rules. A rifle must be clean. A boot must be dry. A man must at least try to appear human. You're also expected to drill. Yes, even here. Marching in mud, practicing formations, saluting ghosts. The officers need to feel in control, and discipline is their drug of choice. You fake it. Left, right, shoulder arms. You wonder if they notice your hands are trembling. And food. You don't make it. You collect it. From the cookhouse in the rear line. 1/2 mile through mud and craters. And the scent of everything gone wrong. You bring back tins of bully beef, hard-tack biscuits, stews that defy classification. You carry it like treasure, because it is. Someone complains the beef smells like feet. You nod. Then you eat it. You're not here to be picky. You try to rotate tasks. Everyone does. But there's always more than hands. Fewer than bodies. Someone's sick. Someone's dead. Someone's missing. You pick up the slack without speaking. You're all part of the same machine now. Creaking, rusted, still turning. You learn shortcuts, how to brace a wall faster, how to stack sandbags without breaking your back, how to move with a full water can without spilling a drop. These are your new skills. You don't brag about them. You just survive with them. And always, always, there's the fear. Fear while working. Fear while resting. Fear while cleaning your boots. You learn to move while afraid. To carry while afraid. To laugh occasionally while afraid. The labour doesn't stop for terror. If anything, terror makes it go faster. And yet, the most exhausting part isn't the shoveling, or the wiring, or the endless walking on knees that beg for mercy. It's the waiting. Because every task is interrupted by the war itself. A scream, a bang, a whistle, a shout, a sergeant yelling, "Incoming!" just a second too late. You freeze, you flinch, you drop everything. Then when the sound stops, you pick it back up. You pretend nothing happened. Because the work must go on. You're not a soldier here. You're a labourer. And your body is the tool. You keep moving, even when you don't want to. Especially then. Movement is currency. Motion is meaning. The only thing worse than being exhausted is being still long enough to remember why. There's a rhythm to trench labour now. A kind of choreography you never meant to learn. You hand off a sandbag without looking. You tighten a bolt one-handed. You walk in silence with a man you don't know, and will likely never speak to again. The work doesn't require names, just hands, just backs, just bodies. Your hands start to go numb. Numb from cold, from friction, from the slow disappearance of what used to be called you. You wear gloves when you can. When they're dry, when they exist. Usually they're soaked or stolen or shredded from the last time you tried to clear barbed wire in the dark. Your fingernails go black. One falls off. You find it in your glove and flick it into the mud like it's not part of you anymore. A man near you starts coughing mid-shovel. He doesn't stop. He bends double, wheezing, mud on his lips. You pat his back. Not because you think it will help, but because it's something to do. He straightens up and says he's fine. You both know he's not, but no one is. So the bar stays low. That afternoon, you're assigned corpse detail. You don't react anymore, just another line on the list. 2 soldiers down by the collapsed trench wall, partially buried, one visible, one suggested. You bring your spade, not to bury, to uncover. That's the part no one mentions. You dig the dead out first. The man's face is not a face, just suggestion. Uniform's still intact though. You check his pockets for ID tags. You don't recognise the name. Doesn't matter. You tie the tag to what's left of his boot and wrap him in a tarp. The second body is harder. Less body, more idea. You scrape together what you can. Later, they'll be moved to a cemetery. But for now, you tuck them under planks near the latrine. It's not disrespect, it's logistics. The sergeant writes it down in a ledger. 2 more lines, that's it. You don't cry, You barely blink. If you did this job with feelings, you'd dig your own grave by sunset. Afterward, you're given mess duty. It's supposed to be a break. It's not. You scrape burned stew from a metal pot with a flat stick. You serve food into cups that still hold yesterday's mould. Someone thanks you. You nod. You don't remember who it was. Later you sweep water out of the dugout. With your hands. The broom is gone. Or maybe it never existed. You sleep for 20 minutes. Maybe 30. You wake up unsure what season it is. Your dreams are a smear of noise and old colours. You think you saw your mother. Or a cow. Or both. Then it's back to labour. Stacking boxes. Fixing sandbags. Chopping wood that's too wet to burn. Carrying a wounded man to the aid station half a mile back. He's screaming. Or maybe you are. You get there. He doesn't. You don't ask his name. There's no time. Your boots fall apart. Not metaphorically. The sole detaches. You tie it together with wire meant for fences. You wrap your feet in cloth. It soaks instantly. You walk anyway. You've stopped feeling below the knee. A boy gets promoted. He's 16. Looks 12. Got a stripe for pulling 3 men out of a crater. 2 lived, 1 didn't. He doesn't smile. He doesn't seem to notice the stripe. You salute him anyway. He nods. That's the whole ceremony. Your shoulder aches. Always. You think something's dislocated, but if you report it, they'll pull you off detail. And someone else will have to dig double. You keep quiet. You cradle it when you sleep. Which is rare. Someone tells a joke. Something about a general and a goat. You don't remember the punchline. You laugh anyway. It feels like something breaking. A release valve you didn't know was still working. Rain starts again. You put your helmet on, backwards, pretend it's a hat. Someone else does the same. You both look ridiculous. No one cares. You get a letter from home. It's wet before you open it. Half the ink has bled. Your name is still visible. That's enough. The paper smells like another world. You read it slowly, then quickly, then slowly again. At night, you volunteer for extra duty. Not because you want to, because it's easier than being alone with the silence. The labour keeps your thoughts where you can see them. When you stop, they run. And they always run toward things you're not ready to feel. You clean rifles, do inventory, sharpen bayonets that will never be used. You wrap cloth around leaking canteens. You polish boots with your sleeve. One man sings, quietly, a lullaby, something from childhood. No one joins, but no one tells him to stop. Later he cries. You pretend not to notice. He thanks you anyway. The night stretches. Work continues. A wall gives in. You rebuild it. A rat dies in a mess tin. You dump it, scrub with gravel. Water's too scarce for soap. A flare goes up in the distance. You freeze. Then you go back to shoveling. The earth doesn't stop moving. Neither do you. You lose track of the days. Not metaphorically, literally. Someone says it's Tuesday. You're sure it's Sunday. Another man swears it's still October. You stopped flipping the calendar weeks ago when the paper moulded. You stop caring. Time is measured in shovels and sleep. In how long your socks stay dry. In how often the sergeant checks the latrine. In how many sandbags it takes to keep your wall from turning into soup. You don't even write letters anymore. Not because you don't care, because you don't know what to say. Still here doesn't fill a page. Not dead sounds dramatic. You tell yourself you'll write tomorrow. You've told yourself that for 20 tomorrows. The days blur. You carry boxes, then forget what's in them. You build a new shelter from scraps, and it collapses before nightfall. You dig a drainage trench, but it rains before you finish. Water rushes in. Everything you moved flows back. You try not to feel defeated, but you are. You dream about work. You dream about shoveling. You wake up sore from imaginary labour. Your body doesn't know how to stop. One man worked straight through his watch, delirious. No one stopped him. They let him keep digging until he passed out. They laid a coat over him and stepped around the hole. Your tools break. Not from force, from time. Handles rot, blades snap. You improvise. A helmet becomes a bucket. A rifle butt becomes a hammer. A plank becomes a stretcher. Ingenuity becomes the last thing keeping you alive. Someone makes a joke about unionising. You all laugh. Too hard. For too long. You find yourself assigned to ration distribution. A step up, maybe. If not for the crowd. Dozens of hands, all reaching, all hungry. And you ladle the stew, counting under your breath. You make the scoops smaller, the food thinner. You lie. Say there's more behind you when there's not. You serve until the pot is dry and the men are quieter. One accuses you of favouritism, another says you skipped him. You don't argue, you just stand there and take it. Later, you throw up behind the latrine. The next day, you're back on wiring duty. No man's land is somehow colder. The ground crunches beneath you. Ice or bones, you don't know. You push stakes into soil that doesn't want to move. You wrap barbed wire around them, your gloves ripping. Blood smears the metal. You leave it. The wire looks like it's weeping. A flare goes up. You drop. Your cheek lands in mud. You don't lift your head until the light fades. The wire still needs tension. You finish the job in silence. Back at camp, someone lights a fire. It smokes more than it burns. You gather around anyway. It smells like wet socks and desperation. A luxury. You hold your hands out. The heat doesn't reach. You stay anyway. Another man collapses. Not from a wound. Just from being alive too long under these conditions. He doesn't speak. He doesn't move. They put him in the medical tent and hope he'll start blinking again. He doesn't. You inherit his shovel. You stop sleeping at night. You sleep in moments. Sitting, kneeling, eating. Your head falls forward mid-bite. You jolt awake, chewing air. Your dreams are static. Not images, not sounds. Just pressure. And still, you work. You mend a roof. You reline a trench. You fetch water, knowing it might be poison. You carry wood that's already rotting. You smile when someone calls your name, even if it's not your name. Close enough. The lieutenant asks how many men are fit for duty. You say 10, you have 6. You hope no one notices. There's an inspection. You line up, uniforms soaked, boots unravelling, rifles streaked with corrosion. The officer looks unimpressed. He mentions discipline, cleanliness, appearance. You stare at him and see a man who's never dug a latrine in his life. You're told to shave. With what? You wonder. A dull knife and hope? You do it anyway. You cut yourself. You leave it. Someone invents a game, throwing rocks into a helmet. First one to miss does double duty. You all play. It feels like childhood, almost. Then the rocks run out. Night comes early. Or late. You don't know anymore. You patch a hole in the wall with your coat. You eat bread that tastes like gun oil. You write "here again" in the mud with a stick. A rat walks over it. You don't stop it. A letter arrives, not for you. For someone buried last week. You read it anyway. It's from his sister. She asks if he needs anything. You fold it carefully, put it in your pocket and never mention it. Another day begins, or ends. You lift your shovel and keep going. It's easy to forget you're in an army. It doesn't feel like one. There are no parades here, no polished brass, no fluttering banners. Just layers of mud, rats fat from the dead, and a chain of command that weighs heavier than your pack. But the hierarchy is still there. Always, especially when things fall apart. Rank determines everything. Where you sleep, when you eat, whether you get sent over the top or stay in the dugout with a pencil and a map. The officers, they have their own space. It's not much, but it's better. Boards on the ground, canvas overhead, maybe a blanket that isn't torn. They have chairs, real ones, and forks. Not spoons, forks. You and the others. You eat standing up, your mess tin balanced on your knee, trying not to drop stew on your foot wraps. No one offers you a seat. No one has to. They don't shout at you often. Not like in training. That would imply urgency. Here, the commands are quieter, heavier. You, dig that out. You, go forward. You, get the body. Their voices don't rise. They don't have to. The officer's word is law, and the law doesn't bleed. There's a captain who hasn't left the dugout in a week. They say he's writing reports. You saw him once, a month ago, polishing his boots. That same week, 3 men were killed trying to retake a listening post he marked on the map. It wasn't there. You mentioned it. Quietly. The corporal told you to shut up. You want latrine duty for a month? He asked. You didn't answer. You get it anyway. The NCOs are closer. They know your name. They know your blisters. They yell. Not because they hate you. Because if they don't, someone dies. Maybe you. Maybe them. Maybe the kid next to you who still thinks his dad's letters matter. But even they have rules. They sleep nearer the centre of the trench. Their blankets are less wet. Their food comes first. You eat what's left. You learn not to ask for seconds. Punishment is a hierarchy of its own. Late for watch? Extra detail. Rifle not clean enough? No rations that night. Miss a salute? Dig a new latrine by yourself? With a broken spade? They humiliate you quietly. Publicly. Always with a grin like they're doing you a favour. The worst punishment isn't physical. It's exposure. You're made to stand at attention in the open, mid-morning, mud up to your calves, while others walk past. They don't look at you, not out of mercy, out of fear it might be them next. One man snapped, argued back, said he'd had enough. They tied him to a post, let him sit there all day. No food, no coat. He begged to be shot, and they let him shiver instead. The word spreads. Don't talk back. Discipline isn't about order. It's about dominance. You watch officers joke with each other about the state of the men. You watch them toast with brandy while you drink from a canvas bag that smells like last week's death. You watch them pin medals on each other for maps that got your friends killed. And still, you salute. Because if you don't, someone reports you. And if someone reports you, the captain makes an example. An example is usually a hole, or a transfer to the worst watch, or something worse. A friend of yours refused to go back over the top. They said he lost his nerve, shell shock, nerves, cowardice. Whatever they call it, the result is the same. He was court-martialed. Not that there was a court. Just a tent and a man with clean hands. They shot him before breakfast. The man who volunteered to tie the blindfold cried afterward. He didn't eat for days. You gave him your biscuit. He didn't thank you. You didn't ask. Now you say yes, sir, before you even think. It becomes instinct. Like flinching at thunder. Like watching the officer's boots so you know which way to walk. Like ducking whenever anyone in a clean coat raises their voice. You don't hate them. Not really. You envy them. Their clean hands. Their dry beds. Their illusions. They still talk about when this is over. You stopped believing in that a long time ago. They have maps. You have mud. You learn not to speak unless spoken to. Not because you're shy, because you've seen what happens when you're noticed. Being invisible is safer. There's a private who tried to correct an officer once. Just a name on a map. A misplaced marker. Meant nothing, really. But the lieutenant didn't like being wrong. The private was reassigned, transferred to front patrol, every night, for a week. By the end of it, he could barely walk. Then he vanished. You think he crawled into the wire on purpose? Now, no one corrects anyone. The favouritism is quiet but constant. A word here, a shift there, a dry blanket, a warm ration. You learn to nod at the right time, to laugh at jokes that aren't funny, to thank a man for not hitting you. The younger officers are the worst. They're fresh from school, clean uniforms, clean boots, clean consciences. They still believe in things. Honour, duty, the chain of command. They speak in phrases like acceptable losses and strategic value. You wonder if they've ever seen a man's face cave in. The older ones are quieter. They don't talk about the war. They smoke a lot. They stare a lot. They know better than to get too close. They've seen too many men turn into statistics. You hear one mutter, "These boys are meat." Then he adjusts his scarf and walks away. Your corporal is in between, too old to believe, too young to stop trying. He's strict, but fair. Fairness matters more than kindness out here. He punishes by rotation. He doesn't play favourites. You respect him because he doesn't flinch when he sees what you've become. Still, he salutes the same men who get you killed. You remember a time when respect had to be earned. Now it's just a uniform. You're told to address officers by their title, even if they're wrong, even if they're drunk, even if they send you into a trench that's already collapsed. You follow orders. You do it with a straight face. You do it because asking why is a death sentence. One night, an officer forgets your name. He calls you number 4. You nod. That's who you are now. Another officer asks if you're literate. You say no. It's a lie. You've read more than he ever will. But saying yes would mean more duties. More writing, more maps, more blame. Better to stay silent. Safer to stay stupid. Intelligence is punished. So is independence. You see a man try to fix a broken drain without orders. Just doing his job. A captain catches him, accuses him of undermining authority, makes him stand in the rain for hours. Later, the captain brags about how the trench is draining better. Doesn't mention the man. The man doesn't come back. No one asks where he went. There's a private who draws. Not war things. Real things. Flowers. Birds. Faces. He hides his sketches in a tin box under his bedroll. One night, an officer finds them. Laughs. Passes them around. Rips them in half. "This isn't art school," he says. The private doesn't draw again. You tell yourself it's just the way things are. You tell yourself you don't mind. But the truth is, it eats you. Slowly. Quietly. Like rotten wood. Until one day you hear a command, and your body moves before your mind does. You realise you've stopped deciding. You've become reflex. Deference isn't respect, it's survival. There's a reward for good behaviour. Sometimes a cigarette, an hour off, a ration of jam. You feel grateful. Then you feel ashamed for being grateful. It was yours to begin with, but the war teaches you that nothing is yours. Not time, not rest, not even your thoughts. The chaplain says we're all equal in God's eyes. You want to believe him. But God doesn't march in boots. God doesn't get dry socks and extra stew. God doesn't send men to die and then sleep well after. The major visits once, steps into the trench, looks around, nods. He says, "Keep up the good work," and then steps back into his car, tyres spinning in wet earth. His driver doesn't speak to anyone. You can still see the mud on his boots was painted on. Another day, a colonel appears. Smells like perfume and pipe smoke. He inspects your rifle, your posture, your coat. He doesn't ask your name. He calls your dugout quaint. You almost laugh. Later you're ordered to clean up for a photo. A real camera? Flashbulb and all? You're lined up. Told to smile. A man next to you lost his brother that morning. He smiles anyway. His lips twitch. That's all they need. The picture goes in a newspaper. Morale high on the front. You get one copy. It's folded into your pocket, next to a dead man's letter. That night, you volunteer for watch. You'd rather face the dark than the faces of men who still believe they're in control. You don't envy them anymore. You pity them. They think they're winning. But you know better. You've already lost something they'll never understand. You start to forget your own voice. You speak only when necessary, and when you do, it's with caution. The tone you use for officers isn't the one you use for friends. The voice you use for friends isn't one you trust anymore. Everything you say feels like a test, like a tripwire. Some men fail it. They speak too freely, laugh too loudly, ask questions no one wants to answer. Those men are transferred, isolated, punished, buried. One tried to talk philosophy, said something about dignity. 2 days later, he was reassigned to a listening post alone. He didn't return. You remember the exact way his hands moved when he spoke, like he was sculpting words from air. Now he's part of it. You don't talk philosophy anymore. You learn to recognize power by the way it walks. Officers walk like the ground owes them something. You walk like it might swallow you whole. You're ordered to carry a wounded man out of the trench. His leg is gone. His eyes are wild. He screams nonsense the whole way, clawing at your chest. The officer walks behind, complaining about the mud on his boots. When you finally reach the field hospital, you collapse. The officer tells you to clean yourself up before reporting back. That night, you wash in silence. The blood doesn't come off. You think it might be yours. You don't care. There's a rumour going around. Someone wrote a letter to command about the conditions. Not a complaint, just facts. Rats, water, cold. The men are tense. Everyone's waiting to see who gets punished. No one admits to writing it. A week passes. Nothing happens. Then the sergeant, who used to hum lullabies, disappears. No explanation. His bunk stripped. His name crossed out. The humming stops. You think about the letter. You think about his face. You decide never to write anything again. A new officer arrives. He smiles too much. Calls you son. Asks where you're from. You don't answer. He keeps talking. Tells you he's read books about the war. You think about handing him a shovel. He wouldn't know what to do with it. He calls a meeting. Says morale is low. Suggests a talent show. A talent show. No one volunteers. He offers extra rations. A cigarette. A letter home. Still nothing. Later, you hear him shouting in his dugout. Alone. You almost feel sorry for him. Almost. He doesn't last long. A shell lands near the mess tent. He's caught in the blast. You carry what's left of him out in a canvas sheet. His boots are still clean. Hierarchy has a smell. You notice it now. Officers carry a whiff of soap, paper, ink. The rest of you smell like rotten rust. You stop noticing your own scent. You only notice when someone else doesn't match it. There's a major who insists on morning inspection, even during bombardment. He walks the line with gloves on, pointing at floors. He scolds a man for missing a button. That man hasn't spoken since his brother died last week. You say nothing, you salute. Later, the man unbuttons his coat. Lets the wind take it, you hand it back. He refuses, says it smells like the war. You agree. Some men keep diaries, hidden under floorboards, inside ration tins, wrapped in oilcloth. You read one once, when the writer was asleep. It was filled with names, not dates, not thoughts, just names. Some crossed out, some underlined. A list of people the war took from him. The next day, you see him staring at a fire. The tin beside him, still closed. You consider starting a list of your own, then decide against it. Too many names. Too little space. Another officer comes through, says he wants to know how things are going. He listens, nods, says, "That's very insightful." He makes notes in a little book. The next week, 3 men are reassigned. 2 never come back. The 3rd won't speak. The little book never reappears. You hear they have started handing out medals again. For bravery, for valour. You wonder what those words mean anymore. You saw a man hold his intestines with one hand and drag another soldier to safety with the other. He didn't get a medal, he got a burial. But someone who filled the report correctly? He gets promoted. You cheer with the rest. Quietly. After all, it's expected. You stand straighter. Salute faster. Not because you believe, but because belief is no longer required. Only repetition. A corporal tries to comfort a crying recruit. The officer scolds him for showing weakness. Says it's contagious. That night, the corporal sleeps outside, rain falling on his back. No one offers to switch places. Compassion is dangerous. You forget what dignity felt like. You remember being told that military structure keeps order, but all you see are cracks filled with silence. You keep your head down not out of respect, but exhaustion. They say war reveals character, but this one doesn't. It replaces it. You're no longer a person, you're a role, a number, a task. When the war ends, they say, you'll go home. You wonder what part of you will make the journey. If you'll still know how to speak to someone who isn't wearing a stripe. If you'll remember how to smile without permission. You look at your hands, covered in scars, burned, split and healed wrong. They look like hands meant for saluting, not for shaking. At some point, the war stops being about nations. It becomes about routines, rules, little customs that make the days bearable, a kind of trench religion, part survival, part madness. You don't pray the way you used to. You used to ask for peace, for protection. Now you pray for smaller things. Dry socks, a warm tin, a shell that lands 5 feet to the left instead of right. Everyone has a ritual. Some men never go on patrol without their lucky scarf. Some tap their helmet 3 times before leaving the dugout. Others sleep with their boots on, even when they don't have to, just in case. One man swears he'll only die if he forgets to wind his watch. He checks it hourly. You know it's irrational, but you do it too. You only eat with the same spoon. You always sleep facing west. You never touch the 4th step on the fire ladder. It's nonsense. But so is everything else. The war broke the rules of reality, so you make your own. The rituals give shape to the chaos. There's a song you hum before watch. You don't remember where you learned it, but it helps. When the shells start, you recite a line from a childhood book under your breath. It's not a prayer, but it works the same way. The chaplain visits sometimes, says a few words, reads from a damp Bible. His hands shake. He says God is with you. No one argues. No one agrees. You've stopped thinking about heaven. Now survival is sacred. There are shrines in the trench, little ones. A photo of a woman tucked into the wall. A rusted medallion nailed to a beam. A rat skull mounted on a stick. No one mocks them. These are holy things now. One man has a lucky coin. He flips it before every patrol. Once it landed on its edge. He stayed behind. The rest of the group never returned. Now he keeps it in a cloth bag, wrapped in a sock. He doesn't flip it anymore. He just holds it. You believe him? Another man writes a letter to his mother before every battle. Never sends it, just writes it. Burns it. Ash and ink. That's his ritual. He says if she ever reads it, it means he didn't make it. You think that makes sense? You start noticing numbers. The 7th shovel breaks. The 3rd man always dies. The 5th ration tin is always spoiled. You try not to count. You count anyway. Eventually, you believe in patterns more than plans. Belief becomes muscle memory. You salute without thinking. You say copy that before you understand the order. You clean your rifle because it's all you can clean. It becomes sacrament. The motions mean more than the result. There's a superstition that whistling invites a sniper. You don't whistle. Another says folding your blanket means you'll never use it again. You leave yours in a heap. Someone swears the same rat visits every trench, that it carries news. You see it one night, staring, watching. You nod. It runs off. You don't tell anyone. There's a myth about a man who made it through the whole war without a scratch. They say he wore a silk scarf from a Paris dancer, never took it off. Then one day it caught fire during breakfast. He ran into no man's land screaming, was never seen again. You tell that story like it's scripture. Every trench has its legends, like the medic who saved 10 men and never spoke a word, the sergeant who could smell shells before they landed, the sniper who wore glasses so thick he could see ghosts. You don't know if any of it is true, but you want it to be, because stories are stronger than silence, because belief is better than nothing. You stop believing in orders, but you follow them anyway, because belief doesn't matter anymore. Only repetition, only rhythm, only the script you've been handed and forced to memorize with your bones. They say the war has purpose. They tell you it's for your country, for your flag, for freedom, for the children you might one day have. But here in the trench, there are no flags, just mildew, mould, and the stink of everything decomposing, including meaning. Still, the posters arrive, fresh from the rear. Bright colours, white smiles, a woman holding a basket, a boy in uniform, clean and grinning. The words beneath them say things like, "Victory depends on you," and "Hold fast." They pin them up next to bullet holes. They curl in the damp before the week ends. No one reads them, but no one takes them down. It would be disrespectful, or dangerous. The officers hold briefings. They use phrases like enemy morale is low and final push. You hear these every month. Every month, the final push gets delayed. Every month, more of you disappear. But the phrases stay the same. You can mouth them back in your sleep. Sometimes they hand out pamphlets, printed words that explain your sacrifice, that it's noble, that it matters, that history will remember you, that your name will be engraved somewhere that children visit on field trips. You burn one for warmth. It smells like glue and lies. Propaganda doesn't work by making you believe. It works by making you doubt your doubts. Just enough to keep going. Just enough to make you ashamed for wanting to stop. There's a phrase the Major uses often. We're turning the tide. You're not sure what that means, but it makes men nod. You nod too. because nodding is easier than asking. When letters arrived from home, they read aloud. Censored. Carefully chosen. A line about harvests. A child learning to walk. A woman praying. The parts about protests. Ration riots. Lost sons. Those don't make it through. You get your letter, and it's missing paragraphs. You hold it like scripture anyway, because it smells like ink and distance. There's a song they play at the rear lines. You heard it once when you rotated out. A band, real instruments, people clapping. You cried? Not because it moved you, because you didn't know how much you missed sound that didn't mean death. They tell you this is the war to end all wars. You wonder if that's a threat or a promise. The chaplain says pain builds character, that God tests the faithful, that suffering purifies. You don't argue. But when he leaves, you dig his words into the mud with your heel and walk away. Some men still carry holy books, tiny ones, wrapped in canvas, pressed to their chest. Some read before sleep, others won't open them at all. One man tore out pages to roll cigarettes, said the smoke carried prayers. You couldn't tell if he was joking. There's a ceremony when someone earns a medal. A small one, a speech, a few words from a superior, applause. You stand in line, eyes forward, hands behind your back. The man beside you is missing fingers. He claps anyway. Later, the medal recipient is asked to write a note for the press. You help him spell the words. He wants to say, it wasn't worth it. You convince him to write, proud to serve. He cries as he signs his name. They print it under a headline the next week. Courage on the front. There's a rumour that every soldier is being recorded in a book somewhere, a master list, a testament. Names, actions, ranks. You dream about it. Wonder which version of you they write down. The brave one, the tired one, the one who carried a comrade through the wire, or the one who stayed in the mud and wept. You start to think about legacy, not because you believe in it, because it's the only thing they haven't taken. Some men write letters addressed to no one, just descriptions. Today it rained. Saw a rat the size of a cat. Breathed in gas and tasted copper. They seal them and bury them under their beds. Time capsules, they say. For the next poor souls who dig here, they keep the illusion alive that someone is listening, that someone will understand, that the war is being witnessed, even if it's only by dirt. Eventually, belief stops being something you hold. It becomes something that holds you. You don't believe because you choose to. You believe because the alternative is unbearable. So you start inventing your own gospel. There's a story about a man who never took off his boots. Not once. Slept in them. Bathed in them. Said as long as they stayed on, he wouldn't die. His feet rotted, turned black. But he lived longer than anyone expected. They called him the saint. No one laughed when they said it. You once found a candle burned into the wall of a dugout. Half melted, half buried. No wick left. Just a stub. A man claimed it had saved him during a gas attack. That the light distracted death for just long enough. He kept that wax in a pouch next to his heart. He wouldn't let anyone touch it. These things become relics. Not because they're sacred, but because they're not nothing. And here, anything that's not nothing becomes holy. Truth erodes in the trenches. Everything gets warped by cold, by fear, by time. You start to doubt your own memories. Was the officer kind or just tired? Did your friend laugh before he died, or did he just exhale? Did you hear a voice in the dark, or was it just the wind? You stop looking for answers. You build myths instead. They spread like fire. Oral scripture, passed down between rotations. You hear about a corporal who walked through artillery untouched, who lit cigarettes from flares, who whispered to rats and made them leave. You never met him, but you believe in him more than your commanding officer. Not because you need heroes, but because you need ghosts who survived. There are whispered gods of the trench, the mud king who swallows the careless, the watchman who trades days of life for sleepless nights, the lady in grey who appears only to the dying. You don't mock these stories, you whisper them before bed, like lullabies made of dirt and wire. You give up on conventional time. Dates blur. Hours vanish. Time is no longer measured in sunrises but in shell bursts, trench raids, supply runs. You mark the passing of days by who's still alive or who isn't. You dream often, but it's never restful. Dreams in the trench are different. Half memories, half nightmares. A schoolyard that smells like blood. A kitchen flooded in trench water. Your mother speaking in German. You don't speak German, but in the dream you nod like you understand. In the mornings, the dreams stay with you. You don't tell anyone. Everyone's haunted. It would be redundant. Even silence becomes sacred. There's a ritual to it. You sit in the dugout, your back against the dirt, and let the quiet fill the space between heartbeats. A shared wordlessness. You learn to communicate with nods, shrugs, stares, with the way someone holds a cup or laces their boots. Language becomes decoration. The real truths live under the tongue. You carve things into the wall, names, dates, symbols, a crude sun, a tally of kills, a heart, a curse. Some men write poetry, not to share, just to leave a mark. Proof that they once had words before the silence swallowed them. One day you find a book in a ruined farmhouse, waterlogged, brittle. It's about astronomy. The stars, constellations, planetary names. You read it at night under a tarp. It gives you a strange comfort, knowing there's an order out there, even if there's none down here. You memorize a constellation, Orion, the hunter. You look for it in the sky before every night patrol. If you see it, you breathe easier. If you don't, you keep your head down and move faster. Even the stars become part of your trench liturgy. Sometimes belief isn't faith or doctrine. Sometimes it's a habit, a reflex. A story you tell yourself until it calcifies into truth. You watch a man draw a map of the trench in charcoal. Not accurate, just emotional. He marks places with symbols only he understands. A spiral means fear. A triangle means silence. A star means hope. You ask what the X means. He doesn't answer. A week later he's gone. His map remains. You keep it. You add your own symbols. There are things you don't explain. A particular duckboard you always avoid. A shard of mirror no one touches. A spoon buried beside the latrine. These things mean nothing, and everything. They are the sacred junk of survival. Every soldier becomes a priest of their own strange religion. You give sermons to yourself in the dark. You baptize each day in sweat and mud. You tithe your blood, your sleep, your sanity. There's no afterlife you trust. No redemption promised. Just a slow, reverent erosion of self. But still you believe. Not because it's logical, but because it's all you have left. At some point, the war becomes a joke no one is allowed to laugh at. You start to notice how ridiculous it all is. Not because it's funny, but because if it's not, you'll scream. The absurdity isn't in the uniforms, or the orders, or the slogans. It's in the details. Like the officer who insists everyone polish their boots before inspection. Even though the trench is waist deep in mud, He docks rations for dull leather. 2 days later, he's eaten alive by lice. Or the rule that says helmets must always be worn, even when you sleep. A man once tried to argue, said it made his neck hurt. That night, a rat chewed off part of his ear. The officer said, "See, regulation saves lives." There's a man who salutes every corpse he passes. Doesn't matter how long it's been there. Legs, no legs, enemy, friend. He stands at attention. No one stops him. Because deep down, you know he's right. The dead deserve respect. Even when they're in pieces. Even when they stare with glassy eyes from under the duckboards. Especially then, the bodies become part of the trench. You don't step over them, you step around them. Carefully, reverently. They're landmarks, markers, grim companions. Sometimes they're named Quiet Paul, Half Jack, the sleeper? One has a pipe frozen in his jaw. You swear he looks amused. They say one of them blinks at night. No one checks. You get used to living with the grotesque. A man's arm poking from a wall. A torso used to reinforce a barricade. You try not to look, but you also can't look away. Not because it's new, but because it's normal now. It's funny in a way. Horrible, spiralling, soul-curdling funny. One day, you see a man eating his rations with a fork made from a femur. You don't say anything. It's efficient. A shipment of boots arrives, all left feet. No one questions it. You just wear them. You walk in circles. You curse in rhythm. There's a rumour that the supply chain has been outsourced to a donkey with vertigo. You believe it, because it makes more sense than the truth. The latrines overflow during a downpour. You're told to dig a new one, but the shovels are being used to brace the walls. So you dig with a helmet. The officer says, "Make do." You do. You hum while you work, just to stay sane. The medic patches a man with flour and tape, says it's temporary. The man dies. The tape holds. Everyone claps. Not because it's funny, but because it's all they can do. There's a man who writes letters to his own foot, calls it Lefty, says it's his only friend that hasn't tried to desert. One day he steps on a mine. Lefty doesn't survive. The funeral is attended by 12 men and a priest. The coffin is a sardine tin. You laugh, quietly, shamefully. You're still laughing the next day. Someone rigs a gramophone to a helmet, plays opera while shaving. A shell lands mid-area. The helmet survives, the man doesn't. No one touches the gramophone again. It becomes an altar. Another man builds a scarecrow out of uniforms, bones, and tin. Calls it General Good Luck. The rats avoid it. The officers salute it. Eventually they promote it. It gets better rations than you. There's a strange kind of comedy that sets in when you've run out of grief. It's not laughter as much as a release valve. A way for the pressure to escape before something essential ruptures inside you. You start making bets on absurd things. Who will get trench foot next? Which duckboard will collapse? What day the lice will outnumber bullets? Someone keeps score on a tin plate. The winner gets a stale biscuit. Someone else turns an old sock into a puppet. It performs a nightly routine, reenacting the latest failed orders, giving satirical weather forecasts, chants of mustard gas and despair, and singing dirty limericks. The puppet becomes a mascot. The sock gets promoted before you do. During shelling, a man recites Shakespeare, loudly, dramatically, full costume, helmet with feathers, a trench coat for a cape. He plays all the roles. You don't know if he's mad or brilliant. Doesn't matter. He drowns out the screaming. You thank him with a cigarette. One night, someone carves chess pieces from bones. Real bones. No one asks whose. A tournament starts, bets are placed. Someone calls it the Grand Trench Championship. The winner gets to sit closest to the fire. The loser cleans the latrines. The rats learn your routines. They show up for roll call. Someone starts naming them. General Squeak, Corporal Nibbles, Lieutenant Tail. You swear one salutes before stealing your bread. In the middle of a bombardment, someone yells encore. You don't know who, but it starts a trend. Every time the shells fall now, someone claps, someone boos. One man shouts, "Not your best work, Jerry." It's blasphemous. It's suicidal. It's the only way to keep from sobbing. You invent awards for each other. Most creative use of mud. Best bayonet ballet. Longest time without crying in public. They're handed out on Fridays. The ceremony includes a speech, a pretend fanfare, and a parade of one. Someone builds a shrine to a tin of peaches. Says it's the last sweet thing he remembers. The tin sits on a pedestal of stacked mess tins. Candles surround it. Someone prays. You can't tell if he's joking. A rumour spreads that the enemy is sending coded messages through birds. Not carrier pigeons, regular birds, sparrows, crows, seagulls. A man spends 3 days trying to train one. He whispers into its feathers like it's a confession booth. When it flies away, he salutes. No one mocks him. You get mail that's been waterlogged for weeks. The ink has bled, the paper flakes. But someone reads it aloud anyway, inventing the parts that are missing. It becomes a love letter, a recipe, and a eulogy all in one. You cry and laugh and cry again, all in the same breath. Absurdity keeps you alive when sense can't. You start to believe the trench is alive, that it remembers, that it listens. You apologise when you trip over a beam. You thank the mud when it doesn't swallow your boots. There's a door nailed to nowhere. Just a door frame, upright, standing in the muck. No walls, no roof. But men walk through it, tip their helmets, and say, "Good morning, sir." It becomes ritual. It becomes law. Someone calls it the office. One day a general visits and is escorted through the office. He doesn't question it. He salutes. You begin to lose track of what's real, not in the poetic sense. In the literal one, a man tells you he saw a horse in the trench. Fully dressed, officer's cap, smoking a pipe, you laugh, until you see it too. It vanishes the moment you blink. You don't tell anyone, you don't need to. Everyone's seeing things now. There's a tree that wasn't there yesterday. No roots, no branches. Just a trunk, leaning against the sandbag wall. A man climbs it every morning, salutes the fog, and descends. You ask why. He says, "Orders." You nod. That makes sense. You stop trusting the sky. Sometimes it's green. Sometimes it pulses. Once, it looked like your childhood bedroom ceiling, with the glow stars. You reach for one and got a fistful of barbed wire instead. You bleed quietly. A man claims his reflection gave him advice. From a puddle. Said to dig left, not right. He dug left. Found a tin of beans. Declared himself a prophet. You start asking the puddles too. They don't answer, but you keep trying. During one cold morning, a fog rolls in thicker than usual. You hear footsteps, voices, laughter, a marching band. You draw your rifle. Aim into the white. Then a tune begins. A lullaby, played on what sounds like bones and bells. The fog clears. No one is there, except a hat. Not yours. Still warm. You pocket it, just in case. Dreams bleed into waking. You see your mother, dressed in uniform. She hands you a letter written in bark. It says, "You've done well." You cry. When you wake up, there's sap on your fingers. You don't talk about it. A man paints a mural inside a dugout. Uses mud, blood, ash, and tea. It shows a garden. with birds and women and sky. None of it looks quite right. Too bright, too clean. You sit in front of it for hours, pretending you're there. One day someone wipes it clean with a wet rag. The man who painted it never speaks again. Sometimes you wake up and the trench is silent. No guns, no voices, not even the wind. You look around and everyone is still, staring, not blinking. You wonder if time has stopped, if the war has ended and no one noticed. Then someone coughs and it all resumes. The absurdity becomes comfort, like a bad joke told too many times. The rhythm so familiar, it feels like home. There's a man who swears the war is a play, that none of it's real, that you're all actors. You believe him for a week. You deliver your lines carefully. You bow to the latrine. You wait for applause after reloading your rifle. It never comes. Eventually, the man forgets his lines. He's replaced. No one mentions him again. You develop rituals you don't understand. Tap the wall 3 times before bed. Tie your laces counterclockwise. Avoid speaking during mealtimes. You think it keeps you safe. You don't question it. You don't question anything anymore. Someone builds a sundial out of bones and spoons. It works, sort of. It tells a time that doesn't match the sky, but it's consistent. You use it anyway. You name the hours after the dead. Fergus o'clock. Mary's dusk. Weeping noon. You celebrate birthdays of people who never existed. Bake cakes out of ration powder and candle wax. Sing songs in languages you invent on the spot. Someone proposes to a rat. The ceremony is beautiful. Reality melts. Slowly. Without drama. Like snow under warm breath. By the time you notice it's gone, you don't miss it. You stop reacting to things, not out of strength, but because reaction requires energy. And that's a luxury now. A shell lands nearby. You don't flinch. A man screams. You don't turn your head. Rain soaks through your uniform, your skin, your soul. You keep eating. The bread is mouldy. You don't taste it. You don't care. Something in you has gone still. Not broken. Just quiet. Like the last echo in a deep well. You used to feel things. Anger. Fear. Even awe. Now it's just a dull vibration. A resonance without meaning. Like a hymn in a language you never learned. There's a voice in your head. You name it after yourself. It speaks in your tone. Tells you what to do. When to blink. When to breathe. When to pretend you're still human. You listen. Always. It hasn't steered you wrong yet. You remember faces like old stories. Not specific. Just outlines. An eye shape. A laugh. A scar. You don't know who they were. You just know they mattered once. You stop writing letters. There's no one left to write to. Or maybe there is, but the words won't come. You sit with the paper on your lap. Stare at it. Hours pass. Days. It stays blank. That feels honest. You keep the pen anyway, just in case. Someone tries to cheer you up with a joke. You smile because that's what's expected. But the smile doesn't reach anything. It hovers on your face like fog on a grave. Sleep stops meaning rest. It just means pausing. You don't dream anymore. Or if you do, you don't remember. You wake in the same position you fell asleep in. Rigid, cold, covered in the wet stink of yesterday, and the day before, and all the days before that. Your hands tremble even when they're empty. You used to count the days. Then you counted the meals. Then the deaths. Now you count nothing. There's no point. The numbers don't help. They only hurt. There's a kind of peace in forgetting what matters. You bury your old self like a secret. Dig a mental grave. Toss in your opinions. Your favourite food. the way your voice used to sound. You cover it with silence. A man offers you a cigarette, you take it, you don't smoke, haven't in months, but you light it anyway. Inhale like it's prayer. Exhale like it's confession. You feel nothing. That's the point. Your body keeps functioning. That's all you can really say. You breathe. You blink. You follow orders. You eat when food appears. You walk when someone points. You lie down when told. It feels like puppetry. Like someone else is pulling strings. And you've forgotten what movement ever meant. You've stopped checking the calendar. You've stopped checking the sky. Time has no shape here. No taste. It arrives and departs like a stray shell. Sometimes late, sometimes early. Always dangerous. You speak less, not because you have nothing to say, but because you've forgotten how to make sound mean anything. Words slide out like mud, slow, thick, and pointless. Most conversations now consist of grunts, nods, or just long silences shared between men who have run out of anything that could be called hope. There's comfort in the silence. It doesn't ask anything of you. You sit alone for hours, not thinking, not planning, just existing. The world grows small. A foot of trench wall. The curve of your canteen. A drop of water trailing down a rusted shovel. These are your new gods. These are the only things you trust. Your reflection in a pool of rainwater stares at you with accusation. You don't recognise the man. You don't remember ever being him. His eyes are sunken, his lips pale, his posture sagging with invisible weights. He looks like someone who's been waiting for an apology that never came. You touch the surface and it shatters. The face disappears. That feels right. You forget how old you are. You forget your first name. You forget the sound of your own laughter. You stop correcting people when they get your details wrong. It doesn't matter. It's all guesswork now. Even the voice in your head has grown tired. It whispers now, not commands but soft reminders. Breathe. Step over the body. Don't cry yet. One day you don't even hear that anymore. You watch others break, slowly, quietly. Some shake, some weep. Some just stop moving altogether. You envy them in a way. Their collapse feels like a kind of honesty. You're still pretending, still walking the corpse around like it's alive. Someone calls your name. You turn instinctively, but the sound feels foreign, like an echo from a different life. You answer with a nod. That's all you have left. You used to care about surviving. Now you're just avoiding inconvenience. You dodge bullets, not because you fear death, but because dying would require someone to clean up the mess. There's a difference between pain and suffering. You've stopped feeling pain. Suffering, though, that you wear like a second skin. Quiet, clinging, ever present. It doesn't scream. It doesn't sting. It just is, like air, like gravity. You sleep with your eyes open now, not from fear, just from forgetfulness. You dream of empty things, not darkness, just absence, rooms with no walls, skies with no stars, words that mean nothing, people you almost remember. You wake up feeling like you've never slept, and you forget what your voice sounds like. One night, you try speaking aloud, just to yourself, just a word. Hello? It startles you. Too loud, too real. You don't try again. You watch your hands move and wonder whose they are. You can remember a time they held pencils, flowers, skin. Now they only carry dirt and death. They've become tools, impersonal, functional. You stop feeling ownership over your own body. It moves through routines like it belongs to the trench. You start to feel like furniture, like something placed here on purpose. Not alive. Not quite dead. Just part of the decor. One of many. replaceable, immobile, forgotten. You stop minding the cold. It enters you like an old friend, stays a while. You stop noticing when it leaves. You hear laughter sometimes. Not nearby. Not from anyone you know. It comes from somewhere deep in the mud. A low, gurgling sound. Joyless. Mechanical. Like the earth itself is amused by your efforts to stay sane. You try to recall your favourite memory. Something warm. Something before. But it slips through your mind like smoke. You remember the shape of it, not the substance. Like trying to hum a song you only ever heard once. The emptiness grows familiar. You carry it around like a blanket. It keeps you insulated from hope, from pain, from dreams. It whispers, "You don't have to feel anything today." And you thank it. Some men talk about after, what they'll do, where they'll go. You listen, but it sounds like fiction. Fairy tales for the broken. You don't see beyond the trench. You don't plan. You don't imagine. You exist, only exist. You no longer react to death, not even when it happens inches from you. You nod. You step over the body. You keep walking. You say nothing. You start repeating phrases to yourself. Not prayers, not mantras, just fragments. Still here. One more night. Don't fall. They don't inspire, they just fill the space where thoughts used to be. You watch your shadow and feel envy. It's lighter than you. Less burdened. Less haunted. You start thinking maybe the trench is the real world. That everything before was the dream. That if you ever escaped, you'd be lost. Directionless. Like waking from a life you don't belong to anymore. You become frightened of peace. Of softness. Of silence without the hum of war behind it. Because at least here, the pain makes sense. Out there, you'd be expected to feel again. And you're not sure that's something you can survive. The trench doesn't end. Not really. It just fades. The way fog fades into dawn, or breath fades into the air. One moment you're there. The next, you're not sure if you ever were. No announcement, no resolution, no music. Just a long silence stretching out like a road no one walks anymore. You sit where the mud meets the wall, arms folded, eyes half closed, watching a rat clean its face like it's getting ready for something important. Somewhere far behind the line, someone coughs. Somewhere ahead, something burns. But here, where you are, nothing moves, not even time. You lean your head back, resting it against damp wood. You're not asleep. You're not awake. You just are. And in this stillness, in this quiet that's deeper than death, you finally stop trying. There's no lesson here. No glory. No meaning to stitch into a flag or a poem. Just mud and breath and silence. And if you're lucky, a little sleep.